Actually, I want to hear, how does this sound when I'm talking? Um, Sound check. I guess there's a little bit of a delay. I'm talking to myself, trying to hear the sound. Hi, Sean. 5:30. I'm gonna wait for some people to kind of join before kind of getting in. So, looking at a couple things. If there's anything you want to talk about, put it in the chat. And then definitely participate on the conversation. Yeah, I'm gonna pull up some plots from this weekend. Pull up some of the grid. Talk about some of the weekend activity between horses and horse players. Some things to look at going forward. Right now, just watching some workouts. Waiting for some people to join in. I wanted to talk about some of the Derby futures, some of the, I guess they're not juveniles anymore, some of the 3-year-olds to look ahead. Kind of some interesting action as far as where people landed as the favorite, some horses to watch, things like that. It's kind of some interesting takes. Some of the Baffert runners getting some attention. All right. I'll probably start kind of in order the way I wrote this as far as Knicks go, and then go through Hidden Scroll, somewhat related with Brad Cox training both horses, and that kind of being some of the chatter, people talking about Brad Cox today on racing Twitter. And then that kind of goes into Derby futures with the Great One, the Baffert horses, Life is Good, Medina Spirit. I feel like if there's a few others that are taking some attention in there. Prevalence from his debut, which I thought was really impressive at Gulfstream Park on the Pegasus undercard. Definitely caught the attention of everybody. So no real secret, no real secret with him, but still, I was impressed. I watch a lot of horse races, so I watch a lot of horses and have to do notes. So I'm like really, really, really critical of horses, and definitely like in running was one kind of like right off the bat. This horse looks like he could be a good one. Um, so it's interesting. I mean, I think the Derby picture is pretty wide open at this point. Um, no real clear cut standout. I mean, Prevalence is impressive as I thought he was in his debut. It's only one start, you know. Broke a little slow. I actually have the replay right up, so I'll kind of comment on this replay. He broke a little bit slow. Was bet down in that race. I mean, he still won at 7-1, but let's see for these connections. Was 12-1 on the morning line for Brendan Walsh in a big full field where you have Chad and Shug. Shug had a pair? No, he had one. Todd Pletcher had a horse. Ian Wilkes. Todd Pletcher had two. So him taking money kind of for those connections, having a little bit of an idea that he could run some. So broke a little bit slow, and then without really being asked, kind of goes forward and is between horses early, pushing the pace, and that kind of catches my eye kind of right off the bat, because that's not, for a young horse making his first start, it's not the most ideal spot. I think he's just professional, kind of stays forward. The rider's just sort of letting him run. Stays inside, kind of moves into a pace setting role, has those horses to his outside, has horses kind of right on his heels as well. And again, just starts to poke his neck in front, gets his shoulder in front, gets his hips out in front of these horses coming off the turn. Stage Raider, that's one of the Todd Pletcher horses, I believe, kind of comes at him around the turn. He's still like in hand. Again, the rider just letting him run to get some separation. You can see the horses behind him. The horses behind him all getting pushed on. Hey guys, I got a few viewers. I'm talking about Prevalence right now, talking about his maiden win. So you can see the horses behind him as he kind of starts the lead, making the lead coming off the turn. If you sort of take your eye off him real quick and you kind of start watching the horses behind him, you can see riders starting to go to the whip, starting to push along. And again, at Gulfstream, it can be hard to kind of make up ground. Riders got to start riding. But Prevalence is still, he's still in hand. He's still coasting. And sometimes that can be deceptive, because we think instinctually, like with these horses, if they're not being asked, they can do more. But that's not necessarily the case always, right? That maybe they go to the stick, not like this horse ever had to do more. He's clear by so far out in front, but just a really great effort, I thought, first out. Very professional. Maybe people are critical. Oh, he didn't gallop out that much, but that to me looks more or less by design. Physically, I think maybe that's something he's going to have to prove, and he's going to have to be tested with. We're thinking ahead to like classic distance type races, because he doesn't really present to me as right now. And again, it's one race, as a classic type build, but definitely has the brilliance for sure. And again, I thought that effort was really impressive. In fact, that's like the one race on that card that just just really stood out to me as far as getting excited about a horse race, is a maiden special weight race with a first time starter. But overall, that's just the one that kind of, thinking back on the day, that I just keep replaying in my mind. And I'm talking about him, again, if you guys are new to chat, you just jumped in, going through these topics, I'm talking about him because I will get to Derby Futures, talking about how, public kind of put their money in towards some of these horses going towards the Derby, cycling back to Gulfstream Park, getting some reactions from Knicks Go, his win, Hidden Scroll, the great one, his maiden win got a lot of attention on Saturday, Derby Futures, and then just some other kind of chatter on Twitter. I have the plot pulled up. So this is optics plot. If you're kind of new to this format, it's pretty much what I have on the background for all these streams, talking about the races, and then we're handicapping live. Using the plot and using the grid. So right now, because we're looking, we're looking to the past. This is the plot from Saturday from the Pegasus, and it has the results already put in. So they're kind of color coded. We used like the gold, silver, bronze designation. I don't think the silver pops out as much as it needs to, but that's another story. But anyways, that's the way they're recorded on here. So you can see Knicks go in gold, number 5, Jesus's team, second, and then number 3 is kind of buried in here, Independence Hall. You can see him a little bit better here in third. So I think it's important, looking at these races, kind of looking at results, looking how the race was run. Looking at this race shape, he certainly figured, right? Had a pace advantage, especially on standard. So standard being current form, there's really nobody out that can run with him early. So even though he's a circle, kind of lacking some finish, he just has so much early speed, so much separation that he could be able to clear and stay out in front. Now, a couple horses wanted to go with him early, but again, they don't have the type of speed that he has. So when they tried to go with him early, it just took him out. Took him out right away. And it's kind of interesting. So the number 1, we look at surface distance. The number 1, Sleepy Eyes Todd, the one horse that could maybe run with him early, like, maybe kind of keep pace with him, maybe put some pressure on just kind of naturally. Again, the plot is based not on, where we think these horses are going to be in the race, but based on their data, like how they fit in relation to each other, right? And so that's important because sometimes you have a horse that's a front runner, but if he's been a front runner against lesser company, he's not going to be a front runner in graded stakes company. Those other horses are just faster. So it's important with the plot, just keep that in mind, that these horses, it's in relationship to each other. So we'll pull up the grid, and I'll start with the number 1, just from the perspective of like the one horse that was gonna, possibly keep up with Knicks Go and challenge him right from the start. Sometimes this can be a little laggy, which is, I've just started streaming on Twitch, so I'm trying to like figure out all this tech stuff. And I kind of feel like I'm a boomer trying to like work through all this tech stuff. But Sleepy Eyes Todd, so again, going back to the plot, looked kind of like the one horse that could keep up with him in terms of surface distance, and maybe broke slow. We don't have the notes in yet, but like he's nowhere to be found at the first call. So if we're looking at surface distance plot again and knowing the result, the 1 is actually over here. Again, you have Knicks Go with a massive lone lead kind of pace advantage in here. So what I'll do is we'll look at this race and we'll look at it from kind of the way the results kind of came out. So only this race, and then I'm going to filter, this will put the horses in order, kind of start to finish here. And there's still pending verification. That's what this, in terms of optics figures, this little notation is optics figs pending verification. When I scroll over, it doesn't show up on Twitch, but I can see it on my end. So it says when I scroll over on my end, pending optics figs pending verification, but generally, this is what we got. So again, Knicks Go looks like he had that pace advantage, was out in front. He had a little bit of pressure early, looked like number 9, Last Judgment. Number 3, I know he was kind of sitting in the pocket. He wasn't pressing, but the only challenge he had was from this number 9 horse. So we'll kind of look at the plot going back. He's somewhat forwardly placed, somewhat, but again, doesn't have first call speed, so that's left to right, and doesn't have second call speed top to bottom, right? So this is the one horse that tried to go with him. A little bit hopeless, but again, they were stepping up in class. This is a good example of what I was talking about. Horse that was lone before, and then he gets in tougher, and he's not even close. But that was, in terms of Paco, and you have a horse stepping up in class, I think I have no fault with that. They put that horse in the race, and they gave him their best chance. They were a major outsider and had nothing to lose. trying to run that race. Number 3, Independence Hall. So he's sitting third. He's sitting third in the pocket. And again, a little bit of tactical speed, but he's not a front runner. Did well, was kind of able to save ground. I mean, a distant third, kind of no threat to the top 2. Fourth, we have Tax. Tax was just kind of I think some people liked him in this spot. I've always been a little bit questionable with him in terms of distance, but just kind of no real excuse in terms of Tax. Here's his running line, fourth, and then just faded. We don't have the notes in yet, so that would be nice. But anyways, we can just kind of go off the running line. Our 5th place horse, so again, Jesus' team, was just kind of in a good spot, and I think that kind of helped him earn second there. Again, kind of looks that way on plot. Has enough speed to the second call, which made him playable for underneath, even though he's not a square. Because he's like one of the few horses that's above the par line in here. So while these other horses struggle to keep up to the second call, which is how we saw the race kind of play out, he has enough kind of speed to kind of keep up in this race. Code of Honor kind of looked to make a move inside. He sort of flattened out in there. Again, it really wasn't much closing from off the pace. There's Sleepy Eyes Todd, the one that should have been forwardly placed. Not much going on that front, but again, that's kind of a Gulfstream Park type of a thing there. But what I did want to look at is, I might have to refresh this, is we'll look at Knicks Go just kind of as an individual, because some of the chatter, around him was just what a different horse he's been, that effort, in the Pegasus, it's like, it's freaky, but again, we look at the plot, it's very logical for him. He had the pace advantage. You can see, he's running fast races. So the fact that he ran a 107 in the Pegasus, getting the trip that he wins with, is not crazy. That's not a freak performance. That's him running how he runs. I think, people making a case, he's just been such a better horse for Brad Cox, and, that's tough to argue with, because clearly he is. But again, he's an older horse. He ran some fast races early on. He ran a 96 as a juvenile. Ran a 96 Optics Figs as a juvenile in the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile, where he was setting the pace. And it was a very fast pace. Not very fast, but it was a solid pace. They went average early, very fast for that. I guess it's going to be your third quarter, right? So that's your half mile to the 6 furlong mark. It's a pretty solid pace there. And then the fact that he showed grit, right? Game winner, the note, ran his eyeballs out. Again, I'm kind of keying back on a juvenile race. And then, in the slop in the Kentucky Juvenile, this is a race that just, if we talk about trainers, and no, I don't want to diss, like, the previous connections, but there's some subtleties that make a difference on a horse. So if he ran a top, right? He's kind of improving his form. Again, we're going back to last year, but he makes his first, or last year, 2018, his juvenile season. But again, it's important context. First start off of the form cycle, he runs a 72. Then he improves to 88 in his second start for that win. Then he improves again in his third start, right? 72, 88, 96. And again, this is improving. He's won a Grade 1 race, the Breeders' Futurity, Grade 1 at Keeneland, improved. And then this race is like, he's against the flow. He's drawn outside, 12 posts. And it just looks like a time that he's going to regress, right? He's improving. They run him back on 3 weeks, 22 days. So again, this is just like in terms of, kind of squeezing the lemon a little bit. You're going to run back on 3 weeks when you've got a horse that's on an improving pattern, caught a sloppy track, far outside post, was against the flow. Him running a bad race that day, he had every excuse to run a bad race that day. You just take nothing from it. comes back at Tampa. He's had 77 days, no finish other. Couldn't keep up in the stretch, disappointing effort behind horses, and was not the place to be today. So he was kind of as like a subtle X bias. No keep X flow. This is the race. I mean, he is against the flow. And the note is he needs to regroup at this point. So they've kind of maybe rushed him back a little bit. Who knows? Rank and shorter. So it's like at this point, there could be an issue, and maybe there is because he's off 63 days before showing up again. And no finish. Rebounds a little bit, This is not that bad of an effort. Let's take a look at it. Because he's coming back 63 days, so he's been off that 2 months. Runs actually a pretty good figure. Runs a 90, a 91 there. Very fast late, so probably slightly against the flow, even though it was a no finish. Was able to improve, finishing second. Ellis Park Derby, was pressed, was into a late duel. Good energy to clear from the field, far outside post, stayed on well despite pressure in that solid middle fraction. You can see that with the F there. So again, just kind of running on short rest. But again, it's kind of improving. Runs a 95. They run him on the turf, good turf, and he doesn't run bad. Are we faulting that? I don't think so. I mean, it's a little bit stabby of a spot. Again, he's running good fast, average early, fast middle fraction, no keep, dirt. Okay, so then that's where he's off. So we've kind of gone through the history of Knicks Go at this point and been like, he's a good horse, not the greatest timing. He's been against the flow. Hasn't, between the layoffs and the timing, it's like there's still a really good horse under there. So now he has his time off. He comes back. It's not an ambitious placement at Oakland Park, an allowance spot in 2X. He's lone, which is the type of trip that he adores. When he's just out in front, doesn't have pressure. Set a legit pace on the front end, keeping advantage late. Solid effort. Hard to see move forward off that. Well, that was wrong. That was me. I can fault myself for that because he did improve off that dramatically, which we saw. But, it's 225 days later, so maybe there was a little bit of truth to that. But anyways, we've gone through the history that he's been a good horse. Brad Cox got him right. Had to do a little regrouping here. Again, another lone trip. He's able to get away with that soft pace, soft half mile, kick home fast, pressed in the dirt mile. Again, that was another race. Let me pull up the plot where he just had a pace advantage going into the race. We know it's the trainer, but this is Knicks Go right here, the 5. And you can see, in the running lines, he's out in front all the way. The first call, how far is he out in front? Lengths behind. All right, so Complexity's trying to chase him, but he's right off the hip. Little press there. But again, out in front, kind of has that pace advantage all the way through. So again, kind of the spot where he's in, where he runs his race, and then runs his race in the Pegasus. It's not crazy for him to run a 107 that day. Certainly makes sense. Again, he just seems like the time between starts is kind of the key. And that's a big difference when we go back to these races where he was improving in his form cycle and run back in 3 weeks and not show up. But that makes a difference. And again, just had the major pace advantage here. So I don't think there was anything in terms of Knicks Go's effort on Saturday that was out of character. I think that's the race he looked to run and did run, and that's kind of that, I guess. I don't need this open. I don't know. Are there any comments? I mean, there's a couple people in chat, not that much, but anything else we want to talk about in terms of Knicks Go, or go on to Hidden Scroll? Go on to Hidden Scroll. Go back to the 23rd. Oakland. No, not the 23rd. That was yesterday. 24th. And again, we'll start with the plot. Talk about Hidden Scroll. I mean, if you look at the plot, It's like similar to Knicks Go, if not even a much greater pace advantage for Hidden Scroll. I know that's not the trip he got. We'll go through that shortly. But again, just going into this race, he looks dominant over this field from a pace advantage. Pace advantage class, speed figure, and it was form, not great. We'll go into that similar like we did Knicks Go, talking about that. But what I want to do is I wrote about this race for Brisnet, and I you know, it was one of those things where, like, I mean, I can pick any race I want, so there's that. But you know, writing about, I knew there was a lot of attention before when he kind of showed up in the entries. Oh, Hidden Scroll's back. Hidden Scroll's back. He's with Brad Cox. You know, what are we getting? Just people, like, you know, excited because he's that horse. That just kind of gets that. So, I you know, writing about him and like making him a quote unquote pick or whatever is a little bit, you know, risky from my perspective, because he could, you know, he could flop and make me look totally stupid. And so I'm, you know, was willing to put myself in that position because I wanted to write about him similar to how he went through Knicks Go, from the aspect of there's more to this story than just kind of like the story that we've created around Hidden Scroll. So I don't know if you guys want to kind of go back and read through this, but I wrote it through like looking at his run lines, understanding why he ran good races, why he ran bad races, et cetera, going into the race, and why he made sense yesterday in that spot. He was insanely bet down. I think, you know, I didn't think he'd be that much of a favorite. I thought maybe he would be the favorite, but it was a massive favorite just because of, you know, people want to take a shot against him, and you know, I don't blame him at a short price, but he delivered. I also wrote about American Butterfly, and I think, you know, if you get a chance, you want to go back and watch the replays. American Butterfly, I think he finished fifth, like fourth or fifth, but really good effort from him. Really good effort. Was shuffled back after the start, so he's racing further off the pace than he's used to. Made a really good middle move, and then ran on late. And he's in a blanket for the minors, so I know it'll show up as a fifth, but it's more competitive, and especially when you figure that no one was beating Hidden Scroll that day. But a horse to watch for sure in that race. Oh, I have it already pulled up. Look at me. All right. So we'll talk about Hidden Scroll, and just, you know, kind of the first thing. Again, a lot of the chatter sort of right off the bat was like, you know, Brad Cox turned him into a super horse overnight. Not really. I mean, we looked at the facts that he made sense in that spot, had a pace advantage, looked solid over the field. He recorded 94 again. We're still pending verification, but he ran a 94 there, which is not uncharacteristic to his other races, right? He ran that 99 on debut. He made a case, you know, sloppy track. He freaked. But again, he's run a 93 here, 91 as a 3-year-old, early season 3-year-old, a 102, a 95, and his only kind of slow races are turf, which he has some excuses for, in my opinion, not just because of the surface. So if we're looking at, you know, and he had trouble in this race too. But again, for him to run a 94 when he looks like that on the plot, and he's run these fast races for him, is not crazy. This is, you know, very normal. You know, didn't do anything out of this, change this horse in any possible way. That was a really great ride by Giroux. So Hidden Scroll, again, you know, he projected that he could be forwardly placed, could be on the lead, could have that pace advantage, but he broke a little bit slow, and instead of rushing him forward. So I think this effort was, you know, it's obviously a B plus, so it's above a B, above a winning grade. Was pretty professional in the sense that he wasn't rushed forward to make the lead, even though he has the speed to do it. He was just kind of patient. He was kind of patient behind horses, and it wasn't a comfortable spot. It's kind of, you know, behind and between horses and a little bit tight. There's some stress, But it was just like visually, he was just so like I've noted. It's like he kept us cool, right? It's like you're in a crowded elevator and you're uncomfortable and you don't want to freak out, right? Or if you're like you have anxiety on an airplane, you don't want to freak out. You're just like, I'm gonna keep my cool. Like I'm gonna play it cool. Everything's good. Like that's what was going on here. Like he's just sitting there, has that traffic, moves outside, has to steady a little bit. That's where the traffic and the trouble comes in. Moves outside horses around the turn, and it's pretty much no push. He's riding him a little bit, with the hands, just kind of keeping a task, but didn't go to the whip. It wasn't a drive. Kind of like within himself, and that was probably some intention here as well. Of like, I talked about this yesterday because we were talking about horses coming back off layoffs in terms of form cycle and kind of the one of two outcomes that you're looking for bringing a horse off the layoff is like one. We're talking more in the sense of kind of like more kind of claiming types, but it's in general sense. So you're coming back off the layoff. One of two things: you have a horse that's like ready to win, right? You've been picking the spot, getting this horse ready. They're in the place where they're going to win first out. The other alternative coming off the layoff is, the horse, we're bringing him back around. He's not quite there yet, but we got to get him a race. Maybe that's maybe that's what it needs. Maybe he just takes a few races. You kind of know the horse. So you kind of have those one or two scenarios. And with a horse like Hidden Scroll, they're in game with him, even though they're bringing him off the layoff and looking for a win that day. So there's positive intent. They've also got to be kind of thinking down the road with this horse. They've got to be kind of thinking, some graded stakes, whether it's they're going to keep him sprinting here at Oaklawn, maybe try to stretch out a little bit, maybe ship out of town, whatever that is. So the fact that like they weren't, asking for a full out finish, was probably to some extent by design, wanting to kind of get him to win, not taxing him more than they need to, getting some confidence on that front. So again, I'll just kind of I'll go through quick. This is pretty much what I wrote about in terms of the Brisnet article, which is posted, Brisnet and the Circles and Squares. Following his first start, showed a lot of ability that day. Even in the Fountain of Youth, the extended comment, he took contact at the start, bumped hard, lost his footing. He was pushed in the lead, pushed to a really fast pace, and that set up for the top two. Those top two runners came from off the pace. He finished in a photo for show. This was not a bad effort by any means. This was just things didn't go right. Bumped at the start. You can see the pace figures when you're rushing into a very fast pace and you tire late. There's an excuse that comes with that. And the fact that he stayed on for basically third is an upgrade. So he comes back in the Florida Derby, grade 1 race, 28 days later. So relatively short turnaround, all things considered, right? From that big race, had 35 days, which is reasonable, but it's not massive recovery, but did have run a really taxing race here, in my opinion. So some regression this day in the Florida Derby was not out of the question. And we can see that it was a warm-up. He was warm. That's the first time he was ever warm. Was not warm on debut. Was not warm in the Fountain of Youth, but he was warm this day. So again, that's just in terms of form cycle, might be something going on there. Tactic, pocket, other. So we'll get a little deeper dive. Took back in the pocket versus going to the lead. So it's a little bit of correction from the Fountain of Youth in the prior race, just trying to do something a little bit different. But it was kind of just not the right day to do that. He probably would have been better suited for those conditions to go to the front, because then he just had trouble in the pocket. And again, it was just kind of all around, just kind of not the right setup for him. So he comes back. B- at Churchill Downs. Again, not a whole lot of rest between these races. Does have to ship. Not bad. The fact that he improved fast early, very fast late. So that's an indicator of a strong race. We can look to where the winner of this race came from. And you can see the winner of this race came from off the pace. So you have Hidden Scroll here is the 2. So he's dueling with this horse High Crime, the 4. These guys here, first and second call. That's that very fast early. And you can see both these horses start to fade. So they're starting to slow late. And then it sets up for these top 2. So again, not a bad effort for him. He's had to ship. He's had to come off those, tough 2 races. Little flow upgrade in the spot. So again, it's not a bad effort. And this is the time where people are like, overrated. Told you, overrated. And again, we've gone through. It's like there's a little bit more to the story. I hear you. When the horse falters at a short price, you're obligated to some extent to tear them apart, but you're also obligated to think critically about the situation and go, well, what really happened here? So again, he's got some excuses built in for this stuff. He's got some things to prove, but he's got some excuses built in. So again, he's laid up almost a year, 302 days, before he comes back at Gulfstream Park in March. And this was a type of race that just on paper, he was meant to win. It was just kind of like it was a really good spot coming back. He just looked like he had such an edge over those other horses. Cruised. And then gave the impression of a one-turn horse that day. So 48 days later, he's at Oaklawn Park, Count Fleet Sprint Handicap. Runs a 95, was wide, no finish, treble minus, so he's kind of bumped when he's tiring. Wide tracking trip, kind of flattened out, brushed when tiring. Pace perspective, there's kind of not really an excuse here that I can make. I mean, being wide, up close to a solid pace, isn't great. But again, he had a layoff that followed, kind of coming back from a layoff that day. Ran against some good horses. Whitmore was in this field. Who ended up winning this race? Whitmore ended up winning the race. The place finisher Flagstaff, I don't know if you guys remember that race, worth watching the replay. I think he had some trouble at the start, ran a massive race that day that he's never been able to kind of run back to. Those 2 finished, heads apart. So Whitmore kind of getting a perfect trip. Start to see the race shape slow late with Manny Waugh, who won a stakes race on the Run a stakes race on the turf at Fairgrounds 2 weeks ago. Nitrous is another horse. It's a Steve Asmussen horse that's a graded stakes sprinter. I'm pretty sure. I'm going off memory here. So if I make a mistake, that's why I feel pretty confident in that. So a little bit of a flow upgrade, considering he's wide. Where's my scrolly pulley? Yeah, a little bit of a flow upgrade. That's a fast pace for Oaklawn Park. Pretty solid pace there. So maybe a little flow excuse for the fact that he's wide. Not great race, but some excuse. And then we've got a complete excuse. Went right to the nose of the break, lost the rider. That's that. And then was a flow upgrade here. A flow upgrade from the Jaipur. I wrote about that in here. Let me see what I can ride. Yeah, so that's right. Going into the Jaipur, they just rushed him, right? So he went in this race, cut him back, rushed 17 days. Timing, we've talked about already, a little bit of time between starts. Losing the plot here. Showed solid gate speed, challenged into a duel. He was slightly upgraded in terms of race flow as part of a strong early pace. The winner came from off the pace, a solid graded stakes mare, Alexandra. Alexandra is, if you follow racing in the last couple years in turf sprinting, she is a solid closer. Solid closer. So she came from off the pace that day. Tough to give him excuse. August 1st at Saratoga, kind of no finish. But again, it's 2 turns on the turf. He kind of looks like a turf horse, but apparently what he looks like and the way he runs are not the same. So, you kind of excuse this turf season, which has its own kind of built-in excuses. They had some intention over the summer, or I guess, when was this? Not over the summer. End of summer. 926, when he was still with Mott, to run, get back to main track, whatever reason. An issue popped up. He was sold, transferred, and brought back. And again, not an uncharacteristic effort, nothing out of character. It is going to be interesting to see what he does going forward. I think that's probably the biggest test. Is I'm not so much like this certainly makes sense. He looked like he was going to win. He didn't run a speed figure that's uncharacteristic. But what's going to happen going forward, I guess, is what we're dealing with. And I'm sure people will go, oh, he loves the muddy track. Okay. I don't know. The track was off, but it wasn't crazy. Not like when it's at Gulfstream and it's sealed, that's for sure. So these are two different, muddy and sloppy, way night and day difference. I think that's it. We're going through these topics fairly quick. So we'll talk about the great one. Gotta go back a little bit. Go back a little bit further. Because we'll talk about both these horses. I started out talking about Prevalence. If you weren't on the stream when I was doing the replay, talking about him, the impressive, broke a little bit slow, got himself to the front, just rated super professionally. Those other horses were under drive. He's in hand. He pulls away from that field, and is drawing off late. Really strong effort from him. I tweeted out about the great one. I'd read a bunch of articles that came across on Twitter. I didn't happen to see this one at the time. That just didn't mention the fact that it was a 4-horse field. So Brisnet was on it. So credit to them. Yet the great one ranked as 8-5 second choice in the 4-horse field. Important detail in this race. Not just that it was like a 4-horse field, but it's, those horses in the race. Let's pull this up. I think we got to pull this up. Do I have it already? No. Let's go to the 23rd. And it sounds like I'm being critical of this horse, and actually I've been like kind of a fan of him from the start. Plot doesn't really make sense because we had 2 first-time starters, so there wasn't really anything to plot in this race. All right, so here we go. So we've got a 4-horse field. You've got two first-time starters, Fenway and There Goes Harvard. There Goes Harvard is almost 25 to 1 in a 4-horse field. I watched him work going into the race, and it was like, I think that they were in there to help fill the race and to give this horse a start. He was a non-factor going into the race. He's third by default, but again, it's like we're basically looking at a 3-horse field. Do you guys see where I'm going with this? We started with a 4-horse field. We're basically at a 3-horse field. This horse doesn't count. He was not in there to win. Would have needed a miracle. Affable. Pop this back out. We can look at Affable. We'll excuse this running line for now, where he finished second. But going into this race, he hadn't put together a winning effort. 2 B- to start, and just no progression. And I've talked about this before. You've got to have progression with these young horses, especially the good ones. If they're not progressing, they can't move on. Like they're going to need a drop in class. So he, to me, I couldn't see him as a contender. Looked like he'd finish second or third, which he ultimately did. But again, not the strongest rival in stretching out in distance. There was a lot of things. Again, not the strongest rival there. And then we'll go to Fenway. And so Fenway is pop out optics works. Fenway, a first-time starter for Bob Baffert. Fenway had worked with Concert Tour, who won first out, and we'll talk about because he's one of the horses that's getting some action in the futures. And he worked with Hosier, which was the other Baffert horse in that Concert Tour race. Kind of had some hype around him, and I watched the works going in. I thought they were all 3 of those horses were fine. So he made sense in this spot. Again, we don't have a lot of competition, right? It's a 4-horse field. I certainly liked him more than Affable. I certainly liked him more than There Goes Harvard. He fits. He kind of looks, physically looked kind of like a two-turn type horse, so it made sense that they were starting him going long, even though it's not the most characteristic for Baffert. We've seen him do that this season, so a little bit of change from that perspective. But he just, and he was well meant. You could see the optics work. B was a contender. I agree. There was nothing to knock on his works, but just for whatever reason, maybe something went wrong in this race for him to run this effort. So all things considered, you're basically now down to a field of two: the Great One and second place finisher Affable. So the Great One, he wins this race. Pop this back out because I can go through kind of race by race. Going into, I liked him going into the Speakeasy, and I was watching him. The horses that had run that day, they just, there was no real standout. O'Neill actually entered 3 horses in that race, and watching them work, I like the Great One he's a good horse. Like sometimes Doug O'Neill, he'll take a shot in stakes races with horses that just don't belong, and I'm like, this one I kind of disagree with optics works here, but I liked his works going in. I thought that there was more intention behind him entering this stake than just taking a swing. So broke slow from the rail, was saved, and it was in traffic. Basically no chance. No chance with that trip sprinting on the turf. His second start is going long on the main track. They were going to go long here, but I think they did want a main track race for him. And he's part of a solid pace. Average early, fast, very fast late. Does get the no keep. Kind of look at this race shape. But was a little bit of a flow upgrade. And again, it's just the second start. Parnelli and Spielberg have both stakes runners. You can look at each one. Spielberg, grade 2 winner, won that day. Already had some stakes placing going in. Parnelli, another horse, this is a sprinter, I think, but good horse in his own right. Finished second that day. Not much else in the race. But was a flow upgrade. We can look at the results. I think that horse ended up winning somewhere. Closing that. Anyways, then at Del Mar, so then they go long on the turf, and again, he's pressed and exploded, sneaky good effort, because this race absolutely fell apart late. And for him to stay on as well as he did, only get beaten by 2 lengths, was pretty good. I gave him a really long shot look in this race. I was on the radio show with Ed, and the favorite was Spielberg, and I'm like, he's solid, he's got more foundation, but made the excuse for red flag. Red flag and Spielberg, they made sense. But I gave, the Great One a look for all the reasons that we're talking about, that he had that flow upgrade. He's kind of always been a good horse, this and that. And he ran to it. B race in a grade 2. And he actually ran a 97 that day. It's at Los Alamitos. They don't run a lot of those type of races. So, speed figure could be a little inflated, but nonetheless. Then he comes back to Santa Anita, the race we were looking at, dominates, perfect trip. He sat right off that Baffert first-time starter. When that horse backed up, he just kept going. And there was no challenge. So a strong effort, but folks, we got to keep in mind. And it was good. He was up close to that fast pace and stayed on late. So even still a little bit of flow upgrade. Came home slow late, but obviously didn't have a challenge. So, that's that. But yeah, got a lot of hype off that. We'll see. He's gonna get tested. He'll get tested again coming up. So, we'll do Derby futures, and then that's pretty much it. Go back to the main page here. So Life is Good maintains individual favorite status in Kentucky Derby. In the Kentucky Derby Future Wager Pool 2. So I did want to look at, let me pull up some notes. I wanted to look at Life is Good. When was that? January 2nd. Santa Anita. Sham. And we're being critical because he was the morning line favorite for the. I don't really get too involved in the Derby features from a wagering standpoint. I get more involved in being like critical of them, like I am being right now. So that's why I'm talking about it. But Life is Good. Your favorite here. Going into the debut back on in November at Del Mar, that race, I don't think it was the strongest race. Pretty compact field from what I remember. Yep. Wipe the Slate came back and won, but that day going into the race, and Roman Centurion did as well. But both those horses on the day were not ready to run the races that they ended up running to break their maiden. Does that make sense? We talked about this like with the layoff. They went into that debut needing the debut and then improved next time out. So that day, Life is Good went into the debut looking to win that debut, which he did. Easy lead, lone, no push. So never asked. Got out in front. Good handling. Fast early, very fast late. So strong. Strong pace figures. B plus. Strong optics grade there. It's like highlighter is bugging me. All right. So a lot of hype off that race. And to me, I'm already going like, well, it was good, but that's a race he's supposed to win. He's on the front end. He's Baffert horse. He went fast. Basically a workout for him. Tough to pull up after the race. A bit headstrong and showed as much in his works. That's the extended comment. And that's the way he worked. He worked like a headstrong horse who's got one way to go. So that already kind of like when people are starting to go like crazy that he's a second coming, I'm like, well, they got to show a little bit more class. You can't just be a bit headstrong and tough to pull up. Anyway, so has that hype going into the Sham. Again, just kind of made sense, and because the way the field, shaped up, he broke in, so not the cleanest out of the gate, was used a bit to clear, uncontested, moderate pace. We got the slow half mile, so he's able to kind of cruise while he's clear, relax, get a breather. It's kind of maintained out in front. Mike Smith didn't go to the stick. Maybe that's a California thing. He was only shown, so he's kind of just waving it at him, doing the thing. Though just kind of like visually, it didn't look like, even if he went to the stick, that Life is Good had more. That's a mile race. We're talking the classics, right? Kentucky Derby feature. And he's drifting out late while he's being shown that stick. And leaning the opposite way. So he's showing him the stick right-handed, this way, and he's drifting out. So, I don't know, just flip me around while you're trying to figure out what's going on here. But he's drifting out to the right-handed stick, which if he's drifting the other way, that makes sense. That could just be, he's a little bit green, he's shifting in, whatever. And Mike Smith is leaning all of his body weight, trying to get him to not do that, and he's still drifting in. So just visually, just okay. Visually, just okay. Not a horse that I'm trying to bet as a favorite for a race months away. That's for sure. He's suspect to me. And look at his optics figures. They went down. I don't know, guys. A little sus. Carnelli, that's the one I think could want a little bit shorter for his best. He's getting a little bit exposed. Washburn is slow. Medina Spirit. People were hyped on this effort when he finished second because he's closing ground behind Life is Good. But I think it's more of a case of Life is Good slowing than necessarily Medina. Medina Spirit was closing a little bit, but I still think there was more of that illusion than actually what's going on. And again, there really just wasn't much behind the two. He improved a little bit, but just overall, again, it's just B's. He's doing what's asked of him. Not a horse that. Let's look at what he is in the favorite book right now. 24-1. So people like him. I don't know. None of those. I'm gonna just do the Baffert horses today. I know there's not many viewers. I've been able to kind of archive these, but I'm not gonna go through the whole thing. Maybe I'll do some more horses tomorrow, but I'll go through these other ones because we'll do Concert Tour and then I'll talk about Bezos too. Maybe I'll talk about. I'll go Concert Tour next. All right, but Medina Spirit and Life is Good. To me, they're not for me. For me, they're not for me. Is the only way to really say it. Life is Good closed as in pool 1. He was 5-1. All of their options was 9-5. Okay. Sorry, I'm saying this wrong. He's not the favorite now. All other 3-year-old option was favored at 9-5. Life is Good, the individual favorite at 7-1. So that's a distinction that I just need to make clear. As an individual betting interest, he's favored over all the other individual betting interests, not the favorite. Okay. We'll go Concert Tour. So Concert Tour, shoot. Oh, he ran on the 15th. Okay, good. I kind of decided to do this stream really impromptu, so that's why my notes are all over here. I'm kind of all over the place, but no, not 12:15, 1:15. That's got to be the 4th. We'll go to the grid. Again, Concert Tour. So he worked with who's that other horse I was talking about earlier? The Baffert horse. Hosier. These two work together. Oh, Fenway. Fenway is the other horse that I was spacing on just there for a second. So Fenway is the horse that ran in the Great One race and faltered, but expected to run well and faltered. So Fenway had been working heads up with Hosier and Concert Tour in that race. So Concert Tour ended up winning, was able to get pretty much a lone lead, stepped slow, moved up early to push pace, took over the lead from the long shot pace setter. Who's our long shot pace setter? The 3? Filter this shit. All right, yeah. So Concert Tour is pushing this horse, number 3, Sense Maker, who's a drop, so a maiden claiming horse. Gets first run on him and goes clear late, moderate pace. Took over the lead, kept clear late, tough to pull up after the wire. And I just noted that he's wearing a very shallow cut blinker. So sometimes I've seen Baffert do this before where he has a horse in a really, really shallow cut blinker, and then he takes the blinkers off next time. And it's not as much of an equipment change, if that makes sense. So even though the horse wore blinkers first time out, it's not like it had a real, severe keeping in focus. It's more just like this versus this. Right? So it's not that crazy of a change when they do the blinkers off. It is a change, but not that crazy of a change. All right. But everything else in this race is really common. In 84, he's got to step forward big time. Looks like a router. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. He needs to show more for me. He reminds me of one of those other Gary Mary West horses that Baffert had. West Coast? No. I don't know. I forget right now. But one of the other horses that, not West Coast. Another one that got a lot of hype, but had some issues and kept getting those really favorable trips. If you guys know the name in chat, shout it out to me. I'll be able to know right away when I see it. It's 2 words. But anyways, just kind of has some things visually that just are kind of I need to see more, and once he gets tested, they get exposed. So I need to see more from him. He's currently 16-1. Essential Quality is right behind Life is Good. We'll talk about the non-Baffert horses on another stream. But Concert Tour 16-1. Bezos 26-1. Unraced. We got to talk about Bezos. So Bezos is unraced. He hasn't raced yet. He's probably, if I could bet any of these horses, this was the price. Life is Good 7-1. Concert Tour 16. Medina Spirit 24. What's the other one? Spielberg 47. I want Bezos. And I'm pretty biased because of the name, but I think this horse is probably the best of all these horses. He's unraced so far, but he should run soon. I wouldn't be surprised. Baffert runs him. He might run him 2 turns first time out. I bet they're going to run him at 7. That's my guess, is they'll run him at 7 furlongs first time out if they can get a race like that. Otherwise, longer. He's fine at 6, but I think that's kind of more of a Baffert pattern, is to go like 7 in a mile. Back on January 2nd, I'll kind of talk about a few of his works. He worked in company with Spielberg. They both got an identical time. It's a breeze. Neither of them are being asked. They're pretty much underhold, but if you're just looking at them visually, Bezos looks better than Spielberg. And then Baffert does this thing where, like, after the work, so once the horses hit the wire and they're not being asked. I've seen him do this a few times. He asks them afterwards, so then they gallop out and they actually like run another furlong, 16th of a mile, quarter mile. Bezos out in front. So good move. A week later, Bezos works in company with a horse called what is that horse? Quality Response, who's a 4-year-old filly who's kind of working her way back around. Lesser company for sure. She did run in some stakes races back when she was racing, but she was coming off a layoff, not quite improved as older. But again, I've seen Baffert do this so many times where if he has a really good horse, this is a tell in his work. He has a really good horse. He doesn't put his good horses necessarily together. He will put a good horse with inferior company and let him get some confidence, and then he kind of matches them up evenly from there. So I don't think that was a negative, but I mean he trounced her, and again wasn't asked. So it's not a work that when you see it on paper you're going to be like, oh, 50-70, blazing. But again, just not asked. She was kind of trying to work a little bit. She couldn't keep up with him, and that's a 4-year-old versus a 3-year-old. On maybe I'm missing a work here, but on January 21st, he worked in company with a horse called Speed Pass, who I think is another. What's up with Speed Pass? Is he a 4-year-old? I think he's a 4-year-old. That's kind of working his way back around. He finished 3rd in the Palos Verdes Stakes in 2020. So yeah, he's kind of coming back around off a layoff as well, kind of similar to the filly, but he was better over that horse, and it was kind of an interesting move because he broke off. He's been working. He was working outside of Speed Pass, and then there was another pair that was in front of them on the work. I think it's Mandela horses that were working in front of them. It's hard to tell just the way the camera angle was, but maybe a pair of Mandela horses, doesn't matter. But anyways, they're coming around the turn, and Bezos has to go like wide around that pair. And he's never asked to catch in front. The other pair stays in front. But again, he's underhold. I mean, he looks like he's a runner. And again, just hasn't been asked for work. So of the Baffert horses, at this point in time, he's the most exciting to me of that group. I'm not a fan of the other ones, so the bar's kind of low. But I like Bezos out of those. And again, we can probably go through this list at another point in time, talking about some of these horses. I mean, that's kind of cool. I think that's pretty much it that I wanted to jump on the stream about. Nobody's really on chat to like talk about some stuff. So if you guys don't have anything to say, I'll jump off the stream. Maybe pick up tomorrow. But yeah, last chance. If you haven't already, if you're just kind of lurking and haven't followed, please follow. In terms of like, I'm a new streamer on Twitch, so, like, I don't know, they want you to get followers, I guess is what I'm saying. So I don't really want to show on that front, but if you can, that would be great. All right. Thanks so much. And I think this is archived, but we'll see. Again, I'm kind of a boomer on this. We'll figure it out, but maybe it's archived. All right.